What is going on, guys? We are looking at players from other eras and their likeness. This is the 91 season right here. So we're going to take a look at Manu Bol, 7'7". Looks like he was on a 4-year, 4.9 million. Was that really his contract? I don't know. Let's take a look at him, see what he looks like. Uh, Not even sure that even looks right. Manu Bol was much thinner than that. I'll tell you that. He was way thinner than that. Let's take a look here. 200. I remember at one time he was under 200 pounds. I know he was thinner than this, what you see here, you know. So let's take a look at his. You could change their hairstyle, man. Look at this. Well, each player has different hairstyles that you can change them from. So you can edit their hairstyles. That face looks somewhat like him, but to me, it doesn't look enough like him. But it's good enough. But he's not nearly as thin as Manu Bol. Manu Bol was extremely thin. I mean, he was very, very, very thin. Let's take a look at some other players here. We got Hershey Hawkins out here. We're not obviously not gonna look at everybody. I mean, as you can see, a lot of these players and some of these players I'm not familiar with. I am familiar with that era though. Got Moses Malone still around in '91. Frank Burkowski. Looks like the likeness is not going to be as in tune as modern day players. You got Danny Shays. I do remember him. I don't remember who was a rookie that year. You got the Washington Bullets here. Got Harvey Grant, Horace Grant's twin brother. I believe they're twins. Am I wrong about that? A.J. English. He was a high scorer in the 1980s. Some of these players have no badges at all. Albert King has 6 badges. They gave these players badges, man. Look at that. Let's take a look at another team. Chicago Bulls. Obviously, you got the Chicago Bulls. You got Michael Jordan. Let's take a look at him. That's definitely a good portrayal of Jordan. As you can see, you could change the players here. Got Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong. That looks just like him. Got John Paxson. And I noticed in some of these games, these NBA 2K games, these historic players, I've seen some that just absolutely look nothing like him. I've seen a few of those. You're going to see some generic players too. I don't see any on this team. This is like a major team in this because of the Jordan Challenge. You got Mark Price here. You got Steve Kerr, man. Of course, you got Steve Kerr. Got Larry Bird. I believe this may have been his final season. Robert Parrish, he played a lot of games. I remember at one time he had the most games in NBA history played. Brian Shaw. I don't see any generic players. Ray Walton. I'm not sure who that is. That might be a generic player. I really don't know. But it could be. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at Larry Bird's likeness. That's good enough. I think it's slightly off. There's something going on with the shape of his head or something. I don't know. It's a little bit off for me. But, who else do I want? You got Danny Manning. I do remember him playing. I remember he eventually played for the Phoenix Suns. You got Ron Harper. He wasn't on the Bulls yet, obviously. Doc Rivers, man. You got Doc Rivers on here. Olden Polynice. I remember a lot of these players. Tony Brown. I don't know who that is. That could very well be a generic player. But the generic players, I'm not sure who's generic and who. I know some of them I do recognize, but some of them are going to be generic. You got the Atlanta Hawks, got Dominique Wilkins, man. Kevin Willis. That doesn't look like Kevin Willis. Kevin Willis had a noticeably large forehead. That face looks close enough, but the head shape is a little bit off. I think these historic players, a lot of them are not as accurate as the current players. Some, yes. If they're like a major player, I would say they probably are. Got the Miami Heat here. Got Glenn Rice. Got Del Curry, man. Got Steph Curry's dad out here. Got a lot of multi-generation play. Got a lot of generational players here who have sons that played after them. You have a lot of that in here. We already looked at Manu Bol. Let's take a look at Mugsy Bogues, man. 5'3", shortest player. Now that looks a lot like him. That's a very accurate version of him. Select hairstyle. You can add headband. That's all you can do. You can't change nothing else on him. Does he have any badges? Let's see, Mugsy Bogues has 20 badges, man. Look at that. He was a 79 overall. That's not bad, to be honest. Especially for somebody to be 5'3" tall. I mean, that's, you don't even see players that size even come close to getting to the NBA. You had Oral Boykins, who was 5'5", and you had Nate Robinson, you had Spud Webb, who they say he was about 5'7". I think he might have been shorter than that. I think he might have been about 5'5". He looked very short. Got Karl Malone on here, of course. Let's take a look at Karl Malone. You got to look at the major players. That's good enough. I think that face looks a little bit off to me. I don't know. Something looks a little bit off. How many badges does he have? He's got 32 badges, man. Look at that. He has no three-point shot whatsoever. He really didn't, he's from that era where bigs didn't really shoot threes hardly at all. Got Jeff Malone. Mark Eaton, I definitely remember it. 7'4", he was that tall. My goodness. Look at his mid-range shot, man. He just didn't have nothing outside at all. He was 100% inside. That's a lot of those players from the 90s, those bigs were like that. That's how they played. It's just what it was at that time. Got Lionel Simmons. You got Spud Webb. They got him at 5'6". Okay. I've seen him registered at 5'7" before, but I think he's 5'6", 5'5", honestly. Let's take a look at him. That definitely looks like him. I would say that's a good portrayal of Spud Webb. What's his dunk attributes look like? Let's take a look, man. Obviously, you're not gonna have a post game with your Spud Webb. They gave him an okay three-point shot. I don't recall him. Look at that drive dunk, 90, man. Look at that. Standing dunk, there's nothing there, 25. He's a 90. Well, he was in a dunk contest. You got to remember, he won a dunk contest before, so you got to give him that respect. Wayman Tisdale. I do recall Wayman Tisdale. And we're going to look at other eras, too. You got Patrick Ewing here. Yeah, that's a very good portrayal of Patrick Ewing. The head shape, the face, everything's on point. How many badges does he have? He's got 21 badges, man. That's a lot of badges. 91, man. A long time ago. Who was on the Lakers? Kareem was not there anymore in 91. I think he might have retired in 89 or 90, if I'm not mistaken. So he just missed it. Some of these players are generic, of course. Got Elden Campbell was there in 91? That doesn't look like the Elden Campbell I remember. I don't know. James Worthy looks a lot like him. Got Magic Johnson. This might have been his final year. I think it was. That looks like Magic, definitely. Got the Orlando Magic. Shaq's not here? So this is before the 91. Well, no, I'm sorry. Shaquille O'Neal was 92. So, yeah, you're right. Orlando was an expansion team, and I think in '89 maybe or '90, something like that. I think this might be a generic player. I'm not sure. I feel like it is. Phil Fields, I feel like that's a generic player. Now, the generic players do represent other players. They just weren't able to get the likeness, or they were dealing with something like that. Dennis Scott was a three-point shooter. Got the Dallas Mavericks. Got Ron Harper. Who else should I look at before I switch ears? Got Dikembe Mutombo. Of course, you already know about him. Detroit Pistons, Isaiah Thomas. Got Dennis Rodman, man. Look at those ears, man. Those ears might be slightly exaggerated. He did have those ears, but that looks a little bit exaggerated, to be honest. He only had one tattoo at that time. That might be true. I'm not sure. But he definitely had those ears, but I think those are... What is he wearing on his... He's got like a mask, you know. Keem Olajuwon, man. Let's take a look at him. He was absolute freaking beast. I mean, he was absolutely unstoppable at one time. You got Kenny Smith out here. What about Robert Horry? Was he there in '91? He might not have been there in '91. He was there, probably not. He was there by the time they won the championship. He was there. Got, obviously Tim Duncan was not there yet. I think Tim might have came in '95 or '96, something like that. Jeff Hornacek, Dan Marley. See, as you can see, they don't have... Well, Charles Barkley might not have been there yet in '91. I think he was on the 76ers, but he's not in this game. Let's take a look and see who represents Charles Barkley in this game. Let's go to the Windy City Bulls. What? Oh, these are... Okay. Let's go to the... That was the D-League or whatever. Let's go to the... Who's on... Oh, we already looked at the Clippers. Celtics. Got your Milwaukee Bucks. 76ers. Okay, you got your 76ers. Now, let's take a look here, because this is where Charles Barkley was at that particular time. There must be a generic player that represents Charles Barkley. Or maybe they just did not put him here at all. That's possible. Maybe they just took that route and just decided to do away with him. I mean, I would look for a player that was close to his size or whatever. It looks like they just totally left him out is what it looks like. Who were your free agents at that time? You got Edmund Brown, James Thorpe. They're not going to be noticeable players, like players that are known, really, because, they would have been signed to teams if they were known. Deleted players, what? So that's that era. We're gonna go to another era. Let's see, that was the '91 era. Should we go here? We're gonna go to 2002 era. We're not gonna go back to... Okay, so we got this era here. Got your Allen Iverson. Got Ray Allen. That to me doesn't really look like him. That right there looks enough like him, but I think it is a little bit off. A little bit off. It's good enough, but I don't think that's accurate enough. You got Sam Cassell. That looks a little bit off. You got Michael Redd. I remember Michael Redd. He actually was from Ohio State. I remember when he was real big in high school. Tony Kukoc. I do remember Tony Kukoc leaving the Chicago Bulls. I couldn't remember what team he went to, though. So he was on the... That does not look like Tony Kukoc to me. Something is clearly off here. Something is wrong with that face. I don't know. It's actually pretty far off, if you ask me. It's not really close. Irvin Johnson, I remember him. Jason Caffey, he had multiple children with several women. He was on the Chicago Bulls at one time. He won a ring or two with them. Here's your Chicago Bulls, and got Jalen Rose was playing at that time. This is 2002, okay, so this is 20 years ago. Got Trenton Russell here, Corey Blunt. Some of these players I do not recognize. Some of them are generic. Okay, 2002. Who was playing for the Cavs? Obviously, that's before LeBron James, obviously. Got Tyrone Hill was still around at that time. I didn't realize he was still around. Bimbo Coles, I do remember that name. And like I said, they're not going to take their time quite as much with the likeness. They're going to do enough, but they're not going to go all out, like they do for the current players. This could be a generic player. I really don't know. That could be also. Whenever you see a weird number, sometimes I think that's a generic player, but I'm not always sure. I know the older NBA 2K games, it was really obvious because they had John Smith names, names like that. So it was like too obvious. You got Lamar Odom 20 years ago. He was doing pretty good at that time. Let's see. I'm sure they got Michael Jordan on the Wizards. You got Jason Williams here. Marc Gasol. Jason Terry was a point guard. I thought Jason Terry was taller than 6'2". I don't know why I thought he was taller than that. His three is only a B plus, man. He must have had a lower percentage because he's one of the all-time leaders in three-point shooting. He's on that list somewhere. Let's take a look at. You got Eddie Jones. Let's take a look at the Wizards, man. Let me see what they got Michael Jordan looking like on here. Got Karl Malone. Obviously, he looks a little bit different. They updated him from the other era because, remember, this is 11 years later from that other roster that we just looked at from 91. When did Patrick Ewing retire? I think he retired in 2000 or 99. I'm not sure. Retired one of those years. He's still at Latrell Sprewell at that time. This is the beginning of Shaquille O'Neal. That's a very good portrayal of Kobe Bryant. Yeah, that's a very good portrayal. I remember Kobe Bryant used to wear the really big jersey, like the really loose jersey, but, that's not that big of a deal, really. That's back when, I think Kobe was still with Adidas at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at Shaquille O'Neal. You got to look at the obvious players. Something is off. I don't know what it is. It definitely looks like Shaquille O'Neal, don't get me wrong, but something is off. I think I don't know. Something just ain't hitting for me. I just can't put my finger on it. It definitely looks like him, but I feel like it's not that something's missing. Something's just like a little bit off here. Who was on Orlando? Tracy McGrady was still there. Who was this? Oh, Mike Miller. Okay. Let's go to the Wizards. I want to take a look at Jordan, see what they got him looking like. He's actually their highest rated player. He's an 87 overall. Okay. Let's take a look at Jordan. Yeah, it's a good portrayal of Jordan. I like the fact that Jordan never had tattoos and stuff. Got Mike. His skin tone seems a little bit lighter than real life, but let's see what we got here. Can you put a headband on him? You can put a headband on him if you want to. Add some accessories. He was playing with Jerry Stackhouse, Christian Laettner. Scottie Pippen was an 80 overall. He was the highest rated player on the Trailblazers at the time. At an 80 overall, that must not have been a very good team. If your best player is an 80 overall, you don't want that. Let's take a look at Scottie Pippen. Yeah, that's good enough. Kevin Garnett was a 96 overall. You know what they tend to do? The players that looks just like Kevin Garnett. I would say he was a pinch thinner than that, but other than that, that's very on point. That's one of the most accurate looking players. But I think it seems like they tend to makes some players not quite as the players that were really, really thin are not as thin in this. Got Gary Payton. That's definitely on point. That's a very good Gary Payton. I know he's got some defense. He's got 26 badges, man. That's a lot of badges. He wasn't a huge scorer. Would they give him C from three-pointers? 86 overall. He was known for defense. Stephon Marbury's got 27 badges. My goodness. Got Yao Ming with just 10 badges. Let's take a look at Yao Ming. I thought Yao came in 03. I guess I could be wrong. That definitely looks just like Yao Ming. He's got he's got his face shape. It looks just like him. Very good portrayal. Glenn Rice was, yeah, I do remember Glenn Rice coming in there, playing for the Rockets at that time. Got your Vince Carter. Ben Wallace playing for the Pistons in 02. They eventually ended up as a champion a few years later. Jermaine O'Neal. Who else should I look at? You got Jason Kidd. How many of y'all remember Michael Finley? He eventually became a three-point shooter. He was a dunker. Trent eventually became a three-point shooter. Anyway, that's going to be this video. I'm going to do another one similar to this, but we don't want to extend it way too much like we pretty much did. It's hard to go through everybody you want to go through.